OverDrive on TSN 1050, the TSN app, and up on TSN 4. Mark Rowe in for Brian Hayes once again, alongside my good pal, who we annually do this, sometimes during the hockey and basketball season, but it's mid-July. That's our sweet spot. Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star. And we have Dave Naylor on the show. I'll steal the line from Brian Hayes that he said to him, Feschuk, we did it. We made it in. Which
yes,
is, I guess, the big job for everyone right now.
That's right. Transportation is the biggest problem in the GTA today. And we transported ourselves here somehow.
Yeah.
Through all the flooding and, various other apocalyptic signs.
It really seems like if you're coming from one section of the city, the downtown, Lakeshore, Gardner, it's a mess. If you're coming from the north, like myself, it was pretty much routine. So.
Yeah, but did you guys get dumped on up there?
Oh, yeah. It rained a lot.
The torrential doom and gloom rain?
Yeah.
It just does not stop?
It didn't stop until it did, and then it got hotter somehow.
Yeah. You were always kind of hoping that the rain will break the humidity.
Yeah.
And you'll like the rain will stop and you come outside and it'll be nice and fresh.
Wow.
No such luck today.
I don't know if that's fresh or not that we're seeing on TSN 4, but these are people abandoning their car.
Oh, my God.
And Union Station's a mess. I think I just mentioned how the Gardner's closed. It's 4:00. Not the best time, but we'll get through this.
Let's hope.
We'll get through this together. It's a wet path. It's not the beaten path of Toronto sports teams that you were writing about for the Toronto Star to kick off the month.
Yeah, speaking of doom and gloom and apocalyptic showers.
Yes.
They never see, like the cloud does not sort of leave.
Yes, this
Toronto
sums up
sports.
the Toronto Blue Jays right here, right now on TSN 4.
Well, and it was just what the Blue Jays needed was to get trolled by their own superstar, Vladdy Guerrero Jr., wearing the Teoscar Hernandez Blue Jays jersey as Teoscar Hernandez of the LA Dodgers wins the home run derby last night.
Yeah, in case you're wondering, Vladdy still misses him, still wishes that they were playing on the same team. And again, you can throw all the analytics and the reasonable takes that Teoscar Hernandez does not solve this team and maybe doesn't even add to a win or two in addition to what they already have. But they're not exactly the Bash Brothers, this team. And when you see that as a fan, and it's been gut-wrenching, the experience this season, to just watch, forget the record, to watch the team, you're watching that and you're going, we used to have that guy.
Yeah. And we've spent, what has it been, a season and a half now? We've spent saying, geez, they could really use some pop from the right-handed side. Mm-hmm. And there's Mr. Right-handed home run derby winner who used to be a Blue Jay and is pined for by the Blue Jays' best player. Yeah.
And again, he has his flaws, but it would be, and AB was talking about it during gameplay and that 2021 season, which they didn't even make the playoffs.
That's right.
But it was a fun season because, they had Marcus Semien and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was up for the MVP that year and Bo Bichette was Bo Bichette. And, when your team, you take that pivot to run prevention, you better be successful in the win and loss column because it's not going to be the most exciting baseball, and it's been neither this year.
Well, that's the problem. That's what we wrote about, Bruce Arthur and I in the Toronto Star's The Beaten Path series, is that in a lot of ways, when you look back at this 8-year run of the Shapiro-Atkins Blue Jays, when they ran Alex Anthopoulos out of the building and he went on to win a World Series in Atlanta and seemingly win the division every year in Atlanta after a apprenticeship in LA, that's been the strange thing to behold, is that Anthopoulos put together what was not only a really good team that broke the 22-year playoff drought, but it was an exciting team.
Yeah.
They were the Bash Brothers. They were the home run leaders of Major League Baseball, and they were fun to watch, and people got on board, because they were successful and because they were going to the playoffs for the first time in 22 years, and because of the bat flip, and because Edwin was sort of an infectious character, and Jose Bautista had a lot of fans, and Josh Donaldson was, an MVP caliber player. But, they were exciting. They were just like that, flat out entertaining baseball. And Shapiro and Atkins, for whatever reason, I would say a misguided reason, in one of the many misreads of this market that they've made over the years, because they've never really shown any real aptitude for understanding the fans, understanding how to speak to them, understanding how to connect to them. Yeah, they turned an offensive powerhouse into a run prevention team. kind of playing small to middle-sized ball in big ball AL East.
Yeah.
And it's just not working.
Yeah. And it's so tough not to be jealous. Like, the Yankees are one thing. They're always going to be the Yankees. We'll see what they do with Juan Soto, but to see the Orioles and the way that they did it, to strip it all down, and then to come back the way that they are, and to, he didn't have a great night, but like a guy like Gunnar Henderson, and to really internally improve your team, as the buzzword was this offseason for the Blue Jays, to have the success, and that they're not going to go anywhere anytime soon. But you're right. I feel like with any organization, or of all the organizations in the city, that the pendulum swings the most with the Blue Jays.
Yeah.
That when they're good and exciting, it really captivates the city and the country as a whole.
Yeah.
But as someone who's lived in the city, everyone gets on board. It's popular. It's a fun, cool thing to do, for lack of better words. And then when they're 500 or below, it's off everyone's spectrum.
Yeah.
In a way. Like the Leafs, good or bad, we're always going to talk about them. Obviously, people go. Maybe that's part of the problem. Even the Raptors, I feel like, even though this past season was such a slog of a year, they were still a little bit more buzz because of certain guys, and maybe it was the trades or not, and maybe I'll eat my words after another season that they're not going to be great. But it seems like the Blue Jays, they have such a high ceiling when it comes to taking over this city, but they also have the opportunity to be forgotten.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And that's the problem they've got right now, is that they're on the verge of being forgotten. And they just renovated their ballpark to the tune of $400 million. They just jacked prices in a way that did not exactly please a lot of their longest serving season ticket holders. And that's a dangerous place to be. Yeah. When a lot of what you're seeing tells you, Mark, that they probably should rebuild, but then you got these sort of economic factors that don't have anything to do with baseball and what's right for the baseball team and the baseball operation that are telling you, well, we can't rebuild because this and this and this.
It's a lot of it is the model that MLSC has had, right? Because they, correct me if I'm wrong, they have built, or they are building, the little suites underneath the stands, right? And so it's just more revenue,
right?
More ways for you to spend money there, a lot of money, because it's high-end stuff. And it works with the Leafs and the Raptors because you always have bodies in that building. They might not always be in their seats, which is another issue. But if you don't have bodies in the building, then people aren't, buying those suites and not spending the money, and obviously not recouping the cost of what ended up being $400 million. So,
right.
Now, did you, like, in your work, I don't know, did it change your opinion at all of how this sort of era of the Blue Jays was constructed from the top? Like, was there ever hope from either Alex Anthopoulos or the organization that he was going to stick around? Or was the moment that Shapiro was hired as president and Paul Beeston was on his way out, you knew that someone else, whether it was Ross Atkins or not, was going to be the guy who was the GM?
Look, you can make the case that, and we do in this piece we wrote about it, that it could have really worked. Like Mark Shapiro, for all the lack of success on the baseball field in the playoffs that Mark Shapiro has had, he's done a lot of good things. Like, he's got his boss. Yeah. His boss is at the company that owns the Blue Jays to spend a lot of money on the Blue Jays. Yeah. Like, in a way that has never been done before.
I know. People want to get mad at ownership because it's a very easy target, corporations.
Right. But they're spending money. Yeah. Now, they haven't spent it particularly wisely, unfortunately, when it comes to player procurement. And you can make a case on whether or not it's been a good business decision to spend $400 million on a ballpark that may be kind of beyond, reclamation in a lot of minds, but it is a nicer place to go now. I'll say that. Yeah. Much nicer place to go if the team's good. And so in a lot of ways, like, it could have been a perfect partnership. Like Mark Shapiro being the bridge to ownership as the president, Alex Anthopoulos being left to spend the money Shapiro procured as a consummate baseball man. If they could have worked together. Yeah. But unfortunately, because of the ham-fisted way Shapiro rolled into town, we all know about the owner of Rogers calling up Jerry Reinsdorf, only Paul Beeston's best friend in baseball, unbeknownst to Mr. Rogers, and saying, hey, I'm looking for somebody to replace Paul Beeston. Do you know anybody good? hang on, I gotta make a call there to my old pal Paul.
Yeah, who's across the table from me eating dinner.
I mean, that's the level of ham-fistedness that went on when it came to hiring, getting rid of Paul Beeston and hiring Mark Shapiro. Bottom line is they offered Alex Anthopoulos, the folks that run the Blue Jays offered Alex Anthopoulos a deal to stay because they saw that the Blue Jays were taking over the sports universe in Canada again.
Yeah.
They were a hot commodity suddenly. They were going to the playoffs for the first time in 22 years. Not to your point, they weren't only Toronto's team, they were yet again Canada's team. There was a national buzz about the Blue Jays. And they said to him, look, you can stay, you can report directly to the ownership. And Alex said, no, I'm not doing that. Like, that's not how a baseball team should be run. I should have to report to the president.
Right.
And there should be a real chain of command. And Alex Anthopoulos, being a man of principle, said, I think I'm better off leaving the building. As hard as it is, as a Canadian, as a baseball lover, as a Blue Jay, lover, he still is a Blue Jay lover. There's still hope that one day they may repatriate Alex Anthopoulos, because I think he'd probably be open to it down the road, not right now. But yeah, it just didn't work out.
And it's the timing, I think, that stings with so many fans, because if this all happened in 2017 or 18, you gave the Donaldson, Bautista, and Encarnacion core their run. And if they don't win a World Series, okay, we gave them a shot. Let's move the page and go in a different direction. It's the fact that it was right in the middle after that 2015 season.
Yeah.
They go to the playoffs again in 2016. They run into a Cleveland team that was red hot, and they don't end up winning that series. And I don't know if that changes if Alex Anthopoulos is the GM or not. But
who knows?
You never know.
Well, but you never know. But we do know this, in interviews that we've done with people around baseball in the many years since. Obviously, these are the things you've heard over the years. Like, Alex had bigger plans for that team. Like, you talk about that's one of the points that was made by a really astute baseball observer in sort of observing the difference between the current regime and Alex Anthopoulos. And it was about Alex Anthopoulos always looked for the ceiling in players. Shapiro and Atkins have always kind of looked for the floor. Well, at worst, he's going to be this. Whereas Anthopoulos is always like much more ambitious. Like, if this guy is unleashed, he could be this.
Right.
Like that sort of always looking for the upside rather than just sort of looking for, well, we'll be a sustainably competitive team. How many times have we heard that sort of?
So they shouldn't be surprised at all with what's going on with the Blue Jays this year, because there's a few guys who are hitting the basement of their potential at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know if they were looking for the basement floor.
Yeah,
you're right.
But like Bo Bichette, this is like he's trying to get back to ground floor at the moment.
Yeah,
and
like he's fallen through the floor.
Right, like
Bo Bichette.
Like, of all the things that we criticized in the offseason of, you sure this team is good enough? Did you see the series against Minnesota? None of us were saying, and watch out, because Bo Bichette's going to regress this year. Like, that's one thing that we, the Justin Turner, I don't know what else you can expect from an aging guy other than he's good in the room and he can come off the bench. You kind of knew the starting rotation was going to probably take a step back, whether it's performance or injuries. They were so good last year.
Mm-hmm.
To have the bullpen, either get hurt or totally take multiple steps back. It's been a recipe for,
regression.
Not to be hyperbolic here, but disaster for them.
Well, that has been disaster.
And you're writing all of this in terms of the Toronto sports scene with Mitch Marner not getting traded, I think.
So far.
But the Raptors just lost one of their guys today, and Gary Trent Jr. Not at the same level as Mitch Marner, but a guy who maybe not that long ago, the organization, they were thinking and certainly hoping that he was going to be a part of the future. And not necessarily the Scotty Barnes, leading the organization part of the future, but a guy who has, I don't know how many times you heard, the upside, the talent, where he could fit in a starting five, or maybe be one of the best bench players in the league. And now he's with Milwaukee, who were it was written actively pursuing him, and that's why they signed him to a 1-year deal.
Yeah,
they really wanted him bad, but they only gave him a 1-year deal.
1-year deal, and you'll notice Woj, who gets everything, every detail of every NBA story there is, And he got this, he pointed out in his tweet, through the Clutch Sports folks who represent Gary Trent. You'll notice he did not report yet the number that Gary Trent will be paid in that 1 year. Have you seen it yet? I have not seen it. But we do know this. The number's important here. It'll be interesting for Raptor fans to see that number because the Raptors were going to be happy to have Gary Trent Jr. come back next year. And the idea, though, was he was going to have to take a pay cut. He made 18.6. They wanted him somewhere in the range of 15 because the second apron era of the NBA means cost control is real. Yeah. Like they could not afford to spend into the luxury tax. They're not going to spend into the luxury tax for after a 25-win season. That's a sure way to get fired if you're Masai Ujiri is tell your owner, I want to get into the luxury tax this year.
Like MLS's like, we know we have a lot of money, but we don't like burning our money.
Exactly. So you can't do it. So he was going to have to take a pay cut, and he didn't want it. He didn't want the pay cut. There was talk that Gary Trent was seeking something, forget the $15 million that the Raptors were hoping he would take. He was looking for something in the range of $20 to $25 million. He wanted to pay a raise. Mm-hmm. And we haven't seen what the Milwaukee Bucks are going to pay him. This idea that the Milwaukee Bucks are a championship.
I was going to say, is he chasing a title?
That's how it was framed by Woj in the tweet from the Clutch Sports sources. That they actively recruited Gary Trent Jr. to pursue a championship alongside his old pal Dame Lillard. I don't see the Bucks being a championship contender, but you never know. I guess. Hey.
Who's a stronger contender in the East, the Knicks or the Bucks?
Oh, it's the Knicks by a mile, isn't it?
Jalen Brunson giving them a team-friendly deal.
Yeah.
Helps, right?
Doesn't hurt. I mean, the team-friendly deal is going to become the thing in the second apron era of the NBA, right? Because if you can get your best players to cut you some slack, suddenly it gives you a lot more reign to fill out the roster around the middle, right? Because right now, like the middle's getting squeezed in the NBA. Mm-hmm. Like the max guys are getting their maxes. The super max guys are getting their super maxes. It's the guys that aren't quite at that level, but are starters or good players, important players, championship kind of changing players in terms of like filling out a roster in an important way. Mm-hmm. Those are the guys that are getting squeezed right now. And Gary Trent Jr.'s, obviously for the Raptors, he wasn't going to make or break the season. Right. They've lost a lot of games without him. I'm sure they can lose a lot of games. They've lost a lot of games with him. I'm sure they can lose a lot of games without him. It's not a make or break issue for the Raptors. And in some ways, you're almost better going younger, going to different guys. You've seen what he can do. It's been underwhelming in my view. Yeah. Never really kind of grabbed what the Raptors were trying to give him. I think they would have been happy to see him grab it, and he never really did.
Well, we'll get into the Raptors a lot in the 5 o'clock hour. A guy who's an NBA champion, back with the Raptors as part of the coaching staff, but he is the coach of their summer league team, Jama Malalela. So we'll get into that with him and how things are going and get an update on some prospects. Grady Dick got hurt in the second game with an ankle injury. We'll see how he's doing, if they expect him back in the lineup tomorrow, which I believe is their third game of the tournament. But just want to pivot to the Open Championship. Didn't say British Open. Had to catch myself. Rex Hoggard's going to join us after the break, but I do want to get your thoughts on our good pal Tiger Woods, who we can't always rely on playing on Saturday and Sunday anymore, but sometimes we can rely on a good soundbite. And he was asked about Colin Montgomerie coming out and saying, you know what, Tiger, you should probably retire. You know what, you're not very good at golf anymore, and I'm Colin Montgomerie, and if you guys forgot who I was, well, now you're talking about me because I made those comments, and Tiger Woods had this to say.
There was comments, last week from Colin Montgomerie who said, why is he here? He should retire. There's no point to this. Do you feel that's a bit hurtful and you've earned the right to make the decision when you decide?
Well, as a past champion, I'm exempt till I'm 60. Colin's not. He's not a past champion, so he's not exempt. So he doesn't get the opportunity to make that decision. I do.
That's what I mean. You've earned that. You've deserved it.
So when I get to be at his age, I can still make that decision. Well, he doesn't.
So I won't drop this mic because I think the bosses would be mad at me. But anytime you're going, I don't know if it's Colin Montgomerie going after someone, but when you're alluding that they should do something like retire and you can't really back it up, it usually doesn't go well. And I don't know what else Tiger could say to that other than what he did say, because he's like, well, I can do whatever I want because I might be the best golfer of all time. And we watched all the greats play at the Masters until they couldn't walk anymore. And, we've seen old champions play at the Open Championship. If Tiger wants to play, I think the Open Championship's like, please play. Right?
Yeah.
Like the organizers might be even more pissed than Tiger with those comments.
Well, I mean, Monty just teed that one up for Tiger so he could smash it like 350 down the middle, right?
Yeah.
Like it couldn't have been teed up better for Tiger because Monty should know better. Like, I mean, for a guy that and I really like the guy, Colin Montgomerie is a
he's doing it for
compelling
the quote.
character. He's a great quote. He's always, amenable to speak with the press. He was a great golfer. He won the European Order of Merit a handful of times, but he never won.
He was that guy that was the best player in the European Tour who would come and be in contention and then
couldn't get it done.
Yeah.
Like they're wondering why Rory can't win a major in 10 years. This guy never won a major in his entire career.
Yeah.
So
It's wild.
Like you don't take shots at the GOAT when you don't have, you got a BB gun instead of like, you know what I mean? You can't do it. And like, I couldn't disagree more with Colin Montgomerie. Like I know there are people saying he's never going to win again. Tiger's washed up. And ever since the accident and where he nearly lost a leg, it just hasn't been the same. And there's
some truth
a
to
record
that.
there. I mean, he can't, not only is he not been the same, he hasn't been able to play. I mean, he's only played a handful of events and he's only made the cut a few times. But I'll say this, like, let's understand the power of Tiger Woods that endures. Like I've been to the Masters and watched Tiger Woods since the accident, and people love this guy. People want to see this guy. People flock to this man, even though they know he's not going to win. Even though they know he's barely making the cut, they still want to see him play. They still want to see him hit a golf ball. They still want to be able to say, "I saw Tiger Woods play golf," because a lot of people haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Younger people haven't had younger people that didn't live through his prime still want the opportunity to go see him play. And as long as he's cool with it, why shouldn't he play?
Yeah.
Like, and the fact is he's even money to make the cut this week. He's got a decent chance. His old coach, Hank Haney, and there's no love lost between those two, figures that this is his best chance to actually contend at a major. It's not Augusta. It's the British Open because he's got a great knowledge of links golf. He loves hitting that low ball, that low stinger that he's still really good at.
A little more walkable.
Yeah, a little more walkable. Now, the fact that it might not be great weather out in Troon this week doesn't sound like it's going to be particularly hot. It might be a little rainy and chilly, which doesn't bode well for the bones of the old Tiger.
What Open Championship isn't chilly?
Yeah, well, they get some hot ones too, but you're right. Most of the time it is kind of inclement at times. But look, I'm all for Tiger doing whatever he wants to do. And look, it's great to see him smashing opportunities like the one Monty just gave him.
Yeah, exactly. Like we can all thank Colin Montgomerie for just giving us something to talk about.
Yeah. Hey, you got to weigh in. Like I like the one thing Montgomerie said that I thought was right is that it does look like Tiger's not enjoying it. Like it looks hard.
Yeah.
It looks painful at times, right? But I guess the counter to that is it never looked like Tiger was particularly enjoying it. Like until he won, until the tournament was in the bag, he was the most miserable guy in the world in a lot of ways out there.
And he wore his injuries, right? I'm not saying he should hide his injuries, but you knew when he was hurt. Like he grimaces like with the best of them.
Yeah.
And that's maybe because he played through so many injuries and he expected more from his body than any golfer we've ever seen and put his body through more than we've ever seen from a golfer, which before he came around, it wasn't a body that anyone aspired to have. And yet he changed the game on so many different fronts. So yeah, I'll give him that it hasn't looked too terribly enjoyable. I think outside of when you see him with Charlie or you see him with his family on the course, and you can see like it does mean something that at least he's doing that. And at least they're seeing him play at an older age. And he did win that one Masters with Charlie waiting on the 18th green for him. And so there's been those moments for him, but
yeah, and that's the shame of it. Like without the accident, I don't think the age thing wouldn't be that big an issue right now, right? Because 2019 he wins the Masters, and 2021 he has the accident. Like if he doesn't have the accident,
right?
I mean, I think you're looking at kind of the golf version of a Tom Brady, who's just continuing to be really good.
He's just, for a guy who has done the improbable his whole year, he's really pushing the limits by obviously coming back from a horrific, injury that was almost traumatic. And to come back and play, but only really play the majors is such a tough ask.
Too tough.
Because even if you don't have a leg issue, and you're 100% to say I'm only going to play 5 or 6 times a year, it's so tough to even if you're Tiger Woods, to beat these guys.
How do you stay sharp?
So it's Royal Troon. Have you been? I know you've been to the Open Championship a couple.
Never been to Never been to a Open Championship at Royal Troon. Okay. No, never been lucky enough to see the postage stamp in real life. But I love watching it on TV.
All right. Well, Rex Hoggard is going to join us from Royal Troon. He's joining us at, I guess it's 9:25 there. It's 5 hours. So thanks because this is prime beverage and late dinner in Scotland time. So it'll be great to catch up with Rex Hoggard from the Golf Channel. That's coming up on OverDrive, TSN 1050, the TSN app, and also up on TSN 4. OverDrive continuing with Mark Rowe and Dave Feschuk. Rex Hoggard from the Golf Channel is going to join us in a couple of minutes. He is over in Scotland for the Open Championship, which kicks off on Thursday. Is there a clear-cut favorite? Like, it has been Scottie Scheffler because of how good he's been all year, but this is a tournament where I believe he only has one top 20 finish. And we haven't seen him since the Travelers, which he won. He will be among the favorites, maybe just not as clear-cut as when he was going into the U.S. Open and, the Masters, which he ended up winning.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, well, the U.S. Open was unique for Scheffler because he never played it. He never played Pinehurst number 2, which was kind of weird for an American kid that was
he got an introduction.
A stud junior golfer and a stud college golfer, never got the chance to play Pinehurst number 2 in a competitive environment. And I think he kind of acknowledged that he paid for that because he came to Royal Troon a week early, right, to get acquainted with the place in a way that he hadn't with number 2. So to me, Scottie Scheffler is the best player on the planet. I don't care what kind of golf they're playing, what course they're playing, he's the favorite.
Okay.
And that's just me. I wouldn't bet against this guy. He's just proven everybody wrong in terms of doubting him. But to me, the second favorite's probably DeChambeau, just given the clinic he just put on at Pinehurst number 2, winning the U.S. Open, as much as it was a Rory collapse. And I know a lot of people will always remember it as a Rory collapse, given the two short putts he missed down the stretch that could have won it for him. It was also an incredible performance by DeChambeau, and he reminded us, after sort of, starting to remind us at the Masters when he was in contention, he reminded us of the, incredible talent that he is and kind of this unique genius who plays golf a different way with different equipment and a different mentality than anybody else. So I'd put him number 2. And then where you put Rory is, to me, the most intriguing question.
Right. And it's funny because, normally he would play a tournament before it anyways, but I feel like playing the Scottish Open, it was as much about meeting with the media and getting that all out of the way because he had to talk about the U.S. Open than it was playing golf. And playing golf, he was raised on links courses and that kind of weather, but kind of making the trek across the ocean and kind of almost reminded himself all the things that he needs to do on a course like this. And so, and he played well. He didn't win, obviously. Robert McIntyre did, but I think that was as important as anything for him. But it's tough to know. It's always been tough to know what to get from him from the majors because it has been his Achilles heel for the last 10 years where he's been as good as anybody, if not the best in the world at times, and hasn't been able to do it at the majors. Can he overcome the mental gymnastics that comes with blowing a U.S. Open the way he did last month?
Yeah, it's a great question. It really is. And yet, with Rory, I wouldn't be surprised. He's had some big disappointments in his career, right? I mean, and I say disappointments in the grand scheme of a life where he's been given all the money in the world. The guy had a $300 million Nike deal as a teenager.
Yeah.
Right? He had more money than he could ever spend before he even really started playing professional golf. But when he hooked that drive
at the Masters
on number 10 with the lead on the Sunday into the cabins in a place no one had ever seen a ball go before. that was the same year he came back and ended up winning the U.S. Open,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Which was the next major back then.
Yeah.
Right? Like it was right away he won.
and when he had the big disappointment, he's had some other disappointments. I'm trying to remember them all now, but he's had others where he's bounced back quite quickly, right? And I think that, like, in the grand scheme of things, for a guy like Rory, you don't get that good by dwelling on the bad moments, because golf is filled with bad moments, even for the best players in the world, right? But this one seemed to hit harder, than any other one.
Well, I think just the way that he reacted too. Like all the sort of examples that you're giving, I don't remember how he acted afterwards in terms of like speaking to the media or not. We all saw the shot where he's watching DeChambeau make the putt and he walks out of the room and he's dejected, and the millions of eyes are on him, and we'd all act the same way, or maybe.
Well, maybe we wouldn't. Who knows?
I don't know, but it's.
You trunk slam and blow off the media. I don't know. He probably regrets.
Well, I meant more in the room, being dejected and leaving.
I don't
going
mind
past
the
the media
dejection.
is not. I'm sure if he could have one back, he probably would face the music and go.
Although
on, but
I give him a pass on that. I mean, he's been, if there's been one golfer that's been an
Facing-
exemplary voice for the game, it's been him. So if he has a moment where he doesn't feel like talking, I give him that. I don't care about that stuff. I'm not a stickler for that. As much as I'm sure if you're covering the tournament, you'd like him to stop.
Yeah.
And I understand that aspect of it too. But yeah, I just think, like he just trunk slammed out of there, squealed out of the parking lot. Apparently he changed his phone number. Did you see that little
because
anecdote?
Tiger called him.
Yeah.
And he ghosted him.
He got,
I don't know if
he
it was
got
a
all
call
these-
or a text, but either way, he ghosted Tiger and then found out later.
Like, he changes his phone number. I mean, you don't know what's going on in the guy's life, right? He was getting divorced, and then he wasn't getting divorced. He thought he was winning the U.S. Open, then he wasn't winning the U.S. Open. He changed his phone number.
You want to escape. Right?
Sometimes you need a change. Who knows? I mean, these guys have complex lives. When you got all that money and all that power, there's a million things going on in the game of golf right now with these negotiations with the Saudis that continue. So it's hard to understand exactly what Rory's going through. I don't claim to, but I do think this was a different type of failure for him. But I also think that, he's come back from failures before. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's right up there this week. And I also wouldn't be surprised if he couldn't close it out, because we've seen it too many times to believe that he's going to.
Yeah. A lot of focus on the Canadians, of course. And, there are different set of expectations for all of them. And a lot has been made of Nick Taylor, who was, I think still is, a national hero for winning the RBC Canadian Open last year and the way that he did it, and wins again in Arizona and will represent Canada at the Olympics, but has missed the cut at the last 8 majors.
Yeah.
And that is, a few times here or there, you can understand, but when it's 8 in a row, something's not going well. And I know he's working on his short game and his putting, and for a guy who hit the 72-foot putt,
Yes.
the fact that the putts aren't rolling in at the moment, and that often happens, right, when you're not playing well.
Yeah.
It's he's one of many that a lot of Canadians will have their eye on if he can turn things around.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's when you kind of get to know the story of Nick Taylor, as we all have, through his great triumph, becoming the first Canadian to win the Canadian Open since 1954, last year at Oakdale. You realize this guy has defined himself in a lot of ways. He sort of rose to prominence in the game as a young man and became the world number 1 amateur, which is pretty rare for a Canadian. Through his short game, right? Like he was an up and down wizard. Never a big kid. Didn't bomb it a mile like a lot of Canadians do. But he could get up and down from a garbage can, as the old saying goes. And so when the putts aren't falling, that's sort of his identity, right? Like it's like if I'm not making putts, what am I? He doesn't. That's just who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's not getting up and down with his wedge, what is he? Not unlike Mike Weir in a lot of ways. Weir was maybe the greatest wedge player of his era outside of Tiger Woods, and he won that Masters in 2003 with a wedge by a lot of accounts, right? Not to mention with some pretty nervy putting down the stretch, which you always have to have at Augusta, it seems. But yeah, it's a worrisome sign for Nick Taylor for sure at the majors, because that's the next big question for all this incredible generation of Canadian pros that we have, right? And it was a fight. It was a dog fight to get to the Olympics.
Yeah.
Which it usually isn't, right? It's usually preordained. Like the top 2 Canadians are pretty much, everybody knows who they are for a long time, right? Or it certainly has been in history. It was a dogfight because there's so many good players. But that's the next question. It's like, who's going to be? They've all won, like Connors has won, and Hughes has won, and Nick Taylor, we know he's won probably the biggest. He's had the biggest moment in terms of PGA Tour wins. Of those guys, Pendrith has won, and it's a long list of guys. But none of them will win a major, and that's sort of the question they're all getting asked. Certainly, I was one of them asked at the last Masters. Was like, it's been 20 plus years since Mike Weir won a major. Brooke Henderson's had all her success.
Yeah.
When is the next Canadian man going to win a golf major? Because that's sort of the only thing that's going to excite anybody.
And do they carry that with them, do you think?
I wonder.
And maybe some carry it more than others. That I don't know if we call it a drought or not, but yeah, like you said, it's been over 20 years since a Canadian man won a major. And
we've only got one. We got Mike Weir, and that's it.
Right.
It's a one-man list.
And these guys are all capable of doing it.
That's exactly
There's
it.
a lot of, you go into a major, you can maybe cut off half the field and say, okay, all these guys are capable of winning, some more likely than others. But is there a Canadian, when you think of Royal Troon and the weather and the way that you have to play links golf, that kind of translates to their game a little bit more? I know there's some love with Mac Hughes and the way that he plays.
Well, he plays, I mean, Hughes is as smart as they come, as analytical as they come, and obviously he's been able to get into the mix at majors. Corey Connors, I mean, he had a good run at the Scottish Open, a top 10 at the Scottish Open. Mm-hmm. That's always a good sign that you're playing good links golf in the lead up. And Connors has, in a lot of ways, Connors has that one thing that makes him elite, which I'm not sure if any of the other Canadian guys have that one skill in which they are superior to the field on most days. And Connors hits is a ball striker supreme, right? He can stand on any practice tee on the planet and know that there aren't many guys that hit it better than him. Maybe
that's why I always think of a U.S. Open. I always think he's the Canadian that can end it at those, because you have to, keep it on the fairway. You can't go wayward, or else you're going to ruin your round. And
you're right. Yeah, and
I'm always expecting him. I guess that goes to every big tournament. You can't. You need to be. You got to stay in bounds, and you got to stay on the fairway. But he's the guy that when the majors come, for whatever reason, I'm always a little more intrigued by Corey Connors than the rest of the schedule on the tour.
I mean, ball striking is the essence of major golf, right? So now, does he putt it well enough? I mean, if Connors gets the putter rolling, putting's never been his strong suit, but when it's rolling for him, he's very difficult to beat. Mm-hmm. And I think, the slower greens over in England or in Scotland can make it a little more putter friendly, or maybe more friendly to a guy who doesn't define himself by his putting, I should say.
Yeah.
So who knows? I mean, it's a crapshoot, but I wonder. You bring up a great point, and I think I've heard some people around some of the Canadian guys saying it is kind of weighing on them a little bit, that it's as much as the old Canadian Open slump used to weigh on them, right? That was a tough.
Yeah.
Mike Weir wore it and couldn't get it across the finish line against Vijay Singh back in 2004, even though Vijay Singh sort of wanted to hand it to him. I was at Glen Abbey that day. It was a tough day for Mike Weir. He just couldn't make a putt, couldn't grab it when it was there for him. And I do think the pressure, no doubt, had a lot to do with that, just the pressure of the drought. Mm-hmm. I don't think this is the same thing at all, because this is not we haven't won our own tournament on our own soil in 50 plus years, turning into 60.
It's not like being a Maple Leaf or anything.
Yeah. What would that be?
Or an English soccer player.
No, this was 69 years. Yeah. This was worse than the Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
And it's we can play golf. We play everybody plays golf in Canada.
We have courses.
We got a high per capita participation rate. Some say it's the highest in the world, and yet we couldn't win our own tournament.
Yeah.
That was kind of embarrassing. But now that embarrassment is in the past.
Looking forward to the Open Championship this weekend. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Rex Hogger is going to be able to join us. Maybe it's the Atlantic Ocean. Maybe his call just couldn't get through.
That's it.
We'll never know, unfortunately. But we're going to get into some confirm or deny. Plus, Dave Naylor will join us a little bit later. We'll get his thoughts on a big shakeup with the Edmonton Elks, big win by the Argos. He's also going to be spending a lot of his summer at NFL training camp, so always looking forward to chatting with Dave about that. That's coming up on TSN 1050, the TSN app, and also on TSN 4.
I can neither confirm or deny that this is in fact a segment.
Austin trades Andrew Raycroft to Toronto in exchange for the rights to Tuukka Rask.
It's been my honor and a privilege to serve as the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs Hockey Club.
It's time for Confirm or Deny.
Do you regret giving all those gentlemen the no trades or no movement clauses?
I can neither confirm or deny that.
I can't confirm or deny.
Confirm or Deny is brought to you by Summit Ford and South Lake Ford Lincoln, where there's no such thing as a no trade clause, any make, any model, anytime. Visit summitford.com or southlakeford.com today. We're going to break it up into a couple of segments, and we're going to kick it off with Bronny James. Bronny James can become an all-star caliber player in the NBA. Mr. Feschuk, can you confirm or deny that?
Well, considering his greatest accomplishment so far since he's been under NBA contract to the LA Lakers is, by my calculations, winning the Call of Duty tournament at the Las Vegas Summer League.
Don't downplay
that. Actually happened.
And
I'm not sure that's something you're really proud of. If your son's a great video game player and he's supposed to be a basketball player, are you really proud of him for that? I don't know if LeBron's proud of that. Considering that,
it's giving me Kyler Murray vibes.
Yeah,
hearing stuff like that. Right?
Do they need a rider in the contract that says more playbook study, less video games, please, Bronny? You're just too good at Call of Duty for us to take you seriously. But he might be too good at Call of Duty for me to take him seriously, Mark. I am worried about that, and there's no way I'm denying this. Like he has a chance to be a good NBA player. No doubt about it. Now, should he have stayed in college for 4 more years, gone to USC, graduated, learned the trade in the college game where he would be more suited to it? I think he probably should have, but who am I to tell you? Tell him how to live his life. His dad got him a guaranteed contract worth $7.9 million. He already had plenty of money. He had the largest NIL deal in the NCAA last year, reportedly at $5.9 million to average 4 points a game for the USC Trojans. But he's not going to be an all-star. Like you talk about floor and ceiling. I think his ceiling's like a 3-and-D guy, really good defender, might move the ball pretty well. He seems like a pretty smart player. He's 0 for 8 from 3-point range the other night.
Right.
If he can make the 3, then he could be a 3-and-D guy, but he ain't going to be an all-star.
Well, it's not getting a lot like what Jaylen Brown was reported saying that he doesn't think that he's a professional player.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which
sitting courtside saying that, it doesn't surprise me. Like there's going to be, everyone criticizes nepotism. Now, nepotism is all over the NBA and every organization, not generally with the players.
No, I guess not. I'm trying to, not to this level where someone who clearly, if he didn't have the same last name as his father's, would not have been drafted. Like no one's pretending. Like as much.
Well, the Lakers are.
Well,
like JJ Redick is trying to tell us he's here because he's earned it. We didn't give him anything. Oh, really?
Wow.
Really, JJ?
And what's he going to say? Now,
well, you could say, he's got her.
What do you want from me? LeBron wanted to say.
Yeah, no kidding. No, you can't say that either. You're right. They're stuck. They've just got to be optimistic. They got to encourage the kid. Look, I feel for LeBron James' son, LeBron James Jr., because there have been other guys that have walked this path in pro sports, like the Howe brothers, the sons of Gordy that played alongside Gordy. But Mark Howe was a junior phenom. Like he led his junior league in scoring, and he made it to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Like
Ken Griffey
was a phenom.
Yeah.
Played with his dad. Hit back-to-back home runs with the old man in a Major League Baseball game. Incredible story. And it was more incredible because the kids were really good. Yeah. They weren't there because their dad was there. They were there because they deserved to be there. And they were really good players. Clearly, this is not the case with Bronny yet. And you can only hope that he turns into a really good player. And that's all you can say. Like, I think he's been dealt a tough hand here. Like, it's got to be difficult. Mark, they're saying, my friends down at the NBA Summer League are saying the scrums and press availabilities for Bronny have like 4 times the number of cameras and reporters than do the the scrums and media availabilities for the number 1 overall pick, Zachary Risachet.
Well, yeah. Of all drafts, I'm not totally shocked.
I understand. No, I'm kind of joking. It's
but
the better news story is Bronny. Trust me, I'm not criticizing the guys covering Bronny because it's a much more interesting story.
Well, okay. My answer, I'm going to deny it because of this answer from JJ Redick. Let's listen to it.
He's a development player. That's how we're looking at Bronny. He's certainly going to spend time with the Lakers. He will spend time as well in the G League. As we sort of build out our player development program, he's going to be an important part of that. And what I've communicated to him right now, what we're looking for is defensive ball pressure. I told him this yesterday. I said, I don't care if you have 10 fouls. I don't care if you get blown by. What I do care about is if you're on the ball and you're 3 feet off the ball. Like, you have to be a guy that's a ball hawk at all times. We're going to develop his shot. We'll develop his ball skills. He's already got a great feel. He has a really good instinctive nature on the defensive end. I thought the third game in the Cali Classic, he made 8 or 9 really good defensive plays. We used the example yesterday. We were at the Canada-USA basketball exhibition game, and I turned to one of our assistant coaches during the game, and I said, I think Lou Dort just single-handedly broke up the 8th possession of the game. Like, his impact, you can't get into your offense sometimes. The shot clock winds down because of his ball pressure. He literally blows up entire plays because of that pressure, and I really believe this. Bronny eventually will be that guy.
So, Lou Dort, great Canadian player, and it's great that he is using him as the example of, like, you can be as good as that guy. Is Lou Dort an all-star?
No. So there you go.
There you go. I'm denying it. So
okay, I like that.
We will continue confirm or deny a little bit later in the show. Confirm or deny was brought to you by Summit Ford and South Lake Ford Lincoln, where there is no such thing as a no trade clause. Any make, any model, anytime. Visit summitford.com or southlakeford.com today. We'll be going to Vegas and joining the coach of the Raptors Summer League team, Jama Mamalela, when we return here on OverDrive on TSN 1050, the TSN app, and on TSN 4.